Good morning. Hi. Welcome to First United Methodist Church. My name is Aaron Reindell. I don't know if I need to say that looking at the crowd. I feel like I know everyone here. But it is so good to see you this morning. Pastor Elizabeth Mosley is also here with us today. She's going to be helping lead us through the service after a minor detour in her morning schedule. It really is a joy to be with you. If you made it here in this kind of weird calendar desert that is this space between Christmas and New Year's Eve, congratulations, you're special. And I forgot to bring my gold stars to give you all, but I owe you. I'll get you next time. And if you are here maybe for the first time today or it's been a while, I just want to let you know that we've carved this space out specially for you. That this space exists to be accessible, to be inclusive, to be an impactful place where you can safely encounter the love of Jesus Christ and the strength of community here together, and on occasion get some pretty banging breakfast tacos. We have a little bit of a special service today. You may have already noticed that we have an acoustic set. Secretly, I love it. I'm a big acoustic set fan. It reminds me of my college days and when we were all doing stomp clap music and listening to Mumford & Sons. But we just wanted something a little bit stripped back, something a little bit pared down, something that kind of honored maybe the chaos and the busyness of this season and offered you a place to rest. Now, before we get started with the preaching part of the day, I think I have a couple questions for you, maybe kind of a game, really more like a quiz, and definitely an invasion of privacy. So I'm just going to ask a couple questions, and I need you to do one simple thing. If you feel that the question applies to you, I just need you to raise your hand. You think we can do that? Okay. When you raise your hand, you can do anything you want. You can laugh, you can cry, you can be joyful, you can sigh, you can do it all. Just raise your hand if it applies to you. Let's get started. Okay, first question. Who here, sitting at our tables, got their Christmas decorations out before Thanksgiving? Okay, I see there's some of us overachievers, probably dealing with seasonal affective disorder and needing a little bit of light. Okay, who here is either going to take their Christmas decorations down the day of New Year's or the day after New Year, so January 1st or 2nd? Who's going to take them down by that time? Oh, killjoys. Let Jesus have a bigger moment. Y'all, did you know that the Christmas season doesn't even end until December 5th? It's the day before Epiphany, when we celebrate the wise men coming and visiting Jesus. Keep those lights up just a little bit longer. Okay, who here hosted family for Christmas? That was us. Who here went to their family, traveled? And who here's done a little bit of both? I'm praying for you. You're incredibly brave. And then I've got one last question. This one's kind of a competition, actually. So, who here went to more than one Christmas party? This could be work, family, friends, running club, yoga. Okay, beautiful. Who went to more than two Christmas parties? It's going to be my husband, Fern. He went to 3. How many here went to more than 3 Christmas parties? More than 4 Christmas parties? So, Molly? All right, Molly, how many Christmas parties did you go to? 6. Woo! So your New Year's Eve resolution is to detox, right? Sure. I'm sure. Or sleep. Or some combination. What, you said that you had gone, what year was it? How many did you go to last year? 17 Christmas parties. That's a lot of baked ham to cook. But not from Walmart. I think we can safely assume, it's safe to assume in this room, that all of us are probably feeling a little bit tired. And I'll be honest, I feel a little bit of the same, even as there is maybe some Christmas spirit, some joy. If you're feeling tired here today, I want you to know I get it. If you feel a little wore out today, I get it. Maybe you feel a little disappointed. Maybe the holiday season landed a little bit flat for you. That's okay. I think the holidays for many people, for us, for people like me and you, can be a very complicated time. Now, it's not that I think that the holidays are necessarily a bad time. I mean, there's a lot to look forward to, a lot of good things that happen, but I do think that they can act as kind of a pressure cooker, as a kind of clarifying lens that reveals to us things about our lives that maybe we don't notice the rest of the year. I think it's during the Christmas season you really find out how understanding and supportive your work is about your work-life balance. Maybe your friends and your family are about your time, your needs to rest, about your desire not to host your in-laws an extra day. I think it's maybe a time when the conflicts and tensions and unresolved history of our life comes to the surface while we sit around the table and Uncle Joe is there. And if you are an Uncle Joe, I'm sorry. It's just the first thing that came to mind. But you remember what he said 3 years ago when you maybe weren't fitting into that outfit the way you thought you could, and that comes to mind. Or maybe you remember that family history, that bitter part, that wound that exists. See, Christmas sometimes can feel like it highlights disparity in our world. Sometimes twinkling lights and inflatable Santas are the backdrop for unhoused people on cold streets, fearful migrants, still hoping for a better life, people whose existence is utilized and weaponized for political gain. In the middle of a frantic season, parties, wrapping, shopping. Mom, can I have a cookie? Mom, can I have this? Mom, can I do that? Mom, you can start to feel like you're losing yourself. Like your life is just part of these demanding systems, your family, your workplace, political institutions, even churches. Systems that are supposed to be created for us, to help us, and care for us and provide for us, can end up exploiting us, misusing us, misunderstanding us, and all too often leaving us unseen. And so then, it makes sense, doesn't it? When you're sitting on the floor on Christmas Day, surrounded by tissue papers and chocolates and giggles from children playing with new toys, when you should be feeling your best, when you should feel the most blessed, there is this strange and nagging feeling, does anybody see me? Do they see the world around us the way that I do? Do they know how I'm experiencing this time? And if they do, does it matter? Our text today comes from the book of Genesis. And if you've ever read Genesis, you know that it's a sprawling story. It covers thousands of years and generations of characters whose lives are complex and complicated and oftentimes even messier than our own, if you didn't think that was possible. And if you've also read it, you know that in chapter 12, starting there, a huge portion of Genesis begins to focus and zoom in on one couple in particular. This couple, Abram and Sarai, who later we would call Abraham and Sarah, are asked by God to leave behind their homeland and to live as nomads in a foreign land. And as part of that ask, God gives them a promise that in doing this, they will have descendants, and that those descendants will become a nation. In fact, they will become a great people who will be so numerous that they're unable to be counted like sands on the shore or stars in the sky. And through them, through this nation, that the entire world will be blessed. And throughout the story, in their own way, Abram and Sarai do follow God. They take the leap, they take the plunge, and they go and they do the things that they believe they're called to do. But also throughout the story, they keep running into themselves. They keep running into their own doubts and scarcity and the pitfalls of culture and power. sometimes wealth. And to be honest, they kind of blunder through it, some good decisions and some poor decisions and everything in between. And yet God continues to show up for them and provide in ways that are frankly unexpected. And if you're like me and you're a reader and you're looking at the things that they do, you might even say that feel undeserved. Now you could say, okay, there's a purpose here, right? They're not just God's two favorite people living in the ancient Near East at this time, but this is a story about God's desire to make them into a people who will bless the world. And that's all good and well if you're Abram and Sarai, but you have to think about the other people in the story. See, at times, the mistakes that they made had an impact on others, people in different situations than them. Sometimes people with less power, and the very people who God designated to become this nation that would bless the world in the midst of their brokenness and fear and doubt and dysfunction, they actually become a source of pain. They become a source themselves of injustice. And this is exactly where our text meets us today. Now, having realized that she's getting older and hasn't yet given birth to an heir, the one whom the promise would come through, Sarai begins to panic. She recognizes that having children as a woman who lived in this context and in this culture was important to your social status. It was important to your future. She didn't want Abram to marry another woman, make that woman the first wife. And so she comes up with a plan. And in this plan, she tries to correct her own circumstances, but in doing so, does something pretty awful. She offers her slave, an Egyptian woman named Hagar, to Abram to kind of take as a slave wife. This is a common practice at this time that doesn't make it right or justified, but these people in this caste would act as a kind of surrogate for her and Abram's child. Now listen, I don't think that the blame here rests entirely on Sarah. There are two people in this party who have power, and if anything, Abram has more of it. If there's somebody in this position who has the ability to put a stop to this and to say, no, this isn't right, we're going to trust God, we're going to do things the right way, we're not going to harm somebody else, we're not going to put them in that position, Abram can step in and say so, but he doesn't. He takes a step back and he lets all the power and the responsibility fall on Sarah, and ultimately it ends up harming Hagar. And I think as we engage this text, this should upset us. I think there's a temptation maybe to kind of rationalize it and say, well, that was then and this is now. But I think we'll discover as we move through this passage, as we move through this story, that God does not think so. So yes, Hagar becomes pregnant. And in her own way, she chooses to resist. And while the text doesn't tell us exactly what she says or what she does, we're told that she shows contempt for Sarai, leading to this escalating conflict. Likely what was happening is Hagar's attempting to reverse the tides, to maybe put Sarai into a place of shame so that she can be honored and perhaps leave her situation. But listen, who can blame her if that's the case? But ultimately, tensions rise, conflict endures, and then Sarai goes to Abram for a solution. And listen to what the text says here in Genesis 16, starting in verse 5. Then Sarai said to Abram, "May the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my slave to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me." But Abram said to Sarai, "Your slave is in your power. Do to her as you please." Y'all, this is the mother of his child. Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she ran away from her. Then the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur, and he said, "Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?" She said, I am running away from my mistress Sarai. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her. This sounds harsh. Remember, this is the wilderness, and she is a pregnant woman, and there's nowhere for her to go. And then the angel of the Lord also said to her, I will greatly multiply your offspring so that they cannot be counted for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, now you have conceived and shall bear a son. And you shall call him Ishmael, for the Lord has given heed to your affliction. He shall be a wild donkey of a man with his hand against everyone and everyone's hand against him, and he shall live at odds with all his kin. So she named the Lord who spoke to her, You are El Roy. For she said, have I really seen God and remained alive after seeing them? In the Old Testament, the term angel of the Lord, or more literally translated messenger of Yahweh, is often used to describe what are in effect actual direct encounters with God. See, it made people uncomfortable to think of God as being able to be seen, as showing up personally in a situation. And so this allowed the authors to kind of distance God, to use kind of a mediated presence to characterize the interaction. But make no mistake, Hagar, like all the others in the Bible who encounter the angel of the Lord just like this, does not seem confused about who she is talking to. She knows that it is God, it is Yahweh. But what is confusing for Hagar, I think, is not who this is, but why. Because this is not her God. Hagar is an Egyptian woman. And if a God is going to show up to her in the wilderness when she is pregnant and abused and fleeing, I imagine she's expecting one of her gods, or perhaps their emissaries. Not the God of her oppressors, not the God represented by the very people who mistreat her. This God, this one who's supposedly creating a great nation that will bless the world, doesn't exactly have the best PR from Hagar's point of view. And it's clear from her response that in this interaction and in this encounter, her expectations are completely subverted. See, what she would have expected if God did show up to her in this way is not blessing, but punishment. She's defied this God's people. And she's fleeing with Abram's child, the child that could be the child of promise. And in the ancient Near East, in a religious world, this is a dangerous situation. One that, in her mind, could very reasonably have ended with death. But it doesn't. Instead, God does the least expected thing possible for this time. Rather than repeating patterns of abuse and exploitation, the ones that Hagar knows all too well, the patterns that she experienced at the hands of powerful systems and people, God blesses her. And not just with any blessing, but almost the exact same promise that God offered Abram and Sarai years later, descendants too numerous to count. Now think about that for a moment. Hagar is far from home, wandering in the wilderness, displaced, vulnerable. And the same God who called Abram into the wilderness now meets her there. Not to demean her or remind her of her place or to shame her back into submission, but to bring her justice. God sees how she's been treated, how the systems that were supposed to protect her instead pushed her down and misused her, and God shows up and does something about it. And God doesn't use the same people. God doesn't say, all right, Abram and Sarai, get it together, go find Hagar, say you're sorry, take her back, give her a meal. When God shows up here, God shows up personally. God takes responsibility. God bypasses the broken systems that maybe even God created to bless, and God takes accountability for what's happening to her. And in an act that is ironic and deeply affirming, God promises that Hagar's descendants, unlike her, will be free. The term donkey here that's used in this blessing may be a little disorienting for you because it sounds a bit like an insult. If I called somebody a donkey of a man, that probably wouldn't land well today. But at this time, the donkey is actually a symbol not just of stubbornness, but of untamable resistance, of adherence to a way of life that is free and unbound and unshackled and unfettered by the oppression and bondage that so often came upon people. A donkey is unwilling to be forced into submission. And God says, yes, there will be conflict. Your hand will be against others. Their hand will be against you. But this is not a sign of disfavor. This is a sign of divine justice. Because a woman whose resistance was punished becomes the mother of a people known for resistance. And so Hagar sees God. And Hagar knows God. And then Hagar names God. Now, Hagar knew the name Yahweh. This is not a secret, and she's just now uncovering it. But she does not choose to use the name that had been given to her for this God, the one that had been given by those who harmed her. She chooses a name that reflects her own experience, her own knowing, and in doing so, she takes her own power. Because this is her God now, not theirs, hers. And she calls God El Roi. Now, often, you may have heard or you may have read in many translations of your scripture that El Roi is translated as the God who sees. And in many ways, this is fine. This is an okay translation, and it is true. It is clear in the story that God sees her. It's clear in the story that God shows up because he knows, because God sees what she's experiencing, what this pain is. But the truth about this term, El Roi, this name for God, is that it's actually more ambiguous than that. See, there were words that could have been used to say the God who sees, but instead, Roi can be translated a number of different ways. It could be the God of seeing, the God who saw, or even the God who is seen. Listen again to verse 13 real quick. It says, "So she named to the Lord who spoke to her, 'You are El Roi.' For she said, 'Have I really seen God and remained alive after seeing him?'" What surprises Hagar most here is not simply that God saw her. He could have been lording over her, micromanaging her, ridiculing her. Seeing is not the only thing that matters in this story. What surprises her is that God shows up, that she sees. And not just that, it doesn't destroy her, it doesn't punish her, but instead, God acts on her behalf. God's care for Hagar in the story is not abstract, it is not sentimental, it is not passive, it is not simply sympathetic, it is visible. Hagar has seen God and lived. A few months ago, my husband Fernando and I moved from an apartment into a house for the very first time. You can applaud. Thank you for that. This was a big deal for us because for the first time, not only did we have more space for little Luna, our dog, to run around in, but we had a garage. Now, I was excited for this because, not really because I wanted to park my car there, but because in all the years that I've wanted this space, that I've wanted a garage, I've wanted to have it for hobbies. And in particular, I've wanted space for woodworking. So we bought some tools, or really Fern bought a bunch of tools. Thank you, Fern. And we made some plans. And we decided our first project was going to be a Christmas stable to put outside and make a place for little baby Jesus. And with a lot of naivete and a little unearned confidence, maybe, I found a picture of a stable on Etsy, eyeballed the dimensions, and got to work. Now, I was rusty. I hadn't done much woodworking since high school, but I did get it built. And adequately so, I would say. And then I bought a stain that I thought would give me this nice, deep walnut finish. And right around Thanksgiving, I put it on feeling so good about what I had done. And the results were, they were disastrous. So I'd forgotten that I had gone cheap, and I made the stable out of pine, and pine is notorious for soaking up stain. If there's any woodworkers in here, you know it's a rookie move not to prepare the wood well, and I didn't. So instead of a warm brown, the stable turned into a smoky charcoal black, and I thought, well, maybe it'll lighten when it dries. It did not, and I was devastated. Now, between my disappointment and the chaos of the holidays, the project went to the wayside, and it wasn't until maybe a few weeks before Christmas I finally worked up the courage to begin to strip that stain and start over. And of course, this is labor intensive. It involves a lot of sanding and scraping and praying, and then time got away from me. And so I'm rushing the days before Christmas Eve, and then I'm up here for all 3 services on Christmas Eve, and I'm tired, and I'm racing against the clock, and I get home, and there's finishing touches, and I'm praying it's dry, and we go, and we move it outside, and we set up the weird cardboard Mary and Joseph that arrived by Amazon that I panic bought, and we placed baby Jesus that Fernando found on Facebook Marketplace, a little too uncannily white and sentient looking, but beautiful. And we did it. And exactly at midnight, we placed our slightly creepy ceramic baby Jesus into the stable, stepped back, and then did what any reasonable person in this situation would do. We took about 30 seconds to admire our work, and then we took pictures and posted them and sent them to our family because they needed to know how good we were at things. And later I found myself wondering, why had I been in such a rush about this? To be honest, I could have finished this after Christmas and it would have been perfectly fine. I don't think anyone was expecting us to have this baby Jesus out in time. It would have been totally okay to save it for next year, but there was this drive, this impulse, there was something inside of me that said, you need to get this done. You need to get this done. By Christmas Eve, you got to have baby Jesus in the stable. And I thought about, what is this? Why was I so driven in this moment? And then it hit me. I think I did this because I think I needed to see God. Throughout my life, I think I found myself in moments just like this. I think it's easy for me, I have kind of a sensitive disposition, to get caught up in the chaos of the seasons and despair of political tensions and the anxiety of dysfunctional family dynamics and the complexity of my work. No smoke, Pastor Elizabeth. Happy to be here. And in all the ways, my world, maybe the world, feels like it isn't what it should be. Sometimes I get to just this place of melancholy and ruminating, and I feel like I need a touch, something, a tangible reminder for God. And on this Christmas Eve, like at many times in my life, I think I just wanted some proof. Proof that God somehow and in some way still shows up for us. And that while the things that are supposed to be a blessing in our lives so often become sources of fear and exhaustion and heartache for us, that God still bypasses those systems and comes to us and personally takes responsibility for our lives. And there at midnight, in a cheap, mostly adequately constructed pine stable, next to flimsy cardboard Mary and Joseph, propped up with tea towel stuffed into a whisker basket, pilfered from our bathroom, I believe that God did just that. Not as a small ceramic baby Jesus, but as a reminder of a God who can be seen. A reminder of a God who is and who God is, and a God who is willing to be for us human. like us. Vulnerable, exposed, subjugated to broken systems, just like us, yet refusing to simply get up and walk away, refusing to stand back and watch injustice unfold, and instead choosing to step in, choosing to act, choosing to be seen. And to be honest, friends, this is not the first time that God has shown up for me like this, and I don't think it's the first time that God has shown up for you like this. If you look at your life and you look at the world around you, yes, you can see some terrible things, but there's so much good too. You can still see God. God did it for Hagar. God did it in Jesus Christ, and God does it for us again and again. And when grace enters our lives in ways we did not expect, when like Sarah and Abram, we make a mess of the blessings God gives us, and when like Hagar, we find ourselves subject to powers outside of our control, God is still showing up. And when I look at my life and the lives of those around me and the long arc of history with its turmoil and its real and pressing troubles, just as surely as I see pain and brokenness and unjust systems, I also see the sometimes quiet, sometimes loud, but always persistent work of a loving God who does not simply just see us in our need, but loves us. And in loving us, shows up. And in showing up, does something about it. And in doing something, is seen. And when is seen, is known. And when is known, can be named. Just like Hagar did, God can be named. In our circumstance, in our trouble, God can be named. El Roy. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.